Hello. Um, so so hopefully this time it goes a little bit better. I just spent about an hour recording myself building a new feature using AI to show this kind of flow, just to kind of show people, and actually went quite well. It went really well actually. In terms of the work itself, what didn't go quite so well was the fact that I had all my audio settings incorrectly set up, so there was a horrible echo on it. And in the middle of the call, my two young kids, decided to have a big argument and a big fight, which was brilliant, just what I needed. So I've decided I'm going to do it again. This time the audio was a bit better. I bought this mic actually just a couple of weeks ago, so it's actually come in handy for this kind of purpose. It wasn't bought for this; it was bought for general. I work from home, so I just got this to have really good audio quality. So anyway, so bit of context. So I've been building a little app in my spare time. It's nothing too major, really. It's the idea is it's a development tool. I don't want to go massively into the detail on what it is and so on, because I'll explain enough for the context here, I suppose. The main thing that I'm trying to show here is how I've, like, over the last week or two, I've really kind of honed Claude Code so that it's suddenly become really useful to me in a way that it wasn't until about a week or two ago. So a little bit of context, I guess. So what is this application? So it's, the working name for it is contextual or dev context. And the idea is it's a little developer tool. I'm going to have a load of kind of tools. It's an app built using something called Tori. Let me show on here, I guess. Tori, which is this, which is similar to Electron. Actually, as it happens, I don't have too much of a front end to show, which is funny because I spent most of my career really doing more front endy kind of things. But at the moment, I've been focusing more on the API that I'm building. Now, actually, I'm normally a big fan of doing kind of like a proper vertical slice for a system rather than focusing on back end and then doing the front end, or vice versa. But the reason I've kind of started focusing a little bit more on the back end now is, there's a few reasons. One is because I'm trying to scope the work, the flow of work for the AI. I'm trying to give it a kind of slightly narrower scope. That's one thing. But the other thing is that I didn't start this project with AI from the beginning. I did use it to teach myself certain things because I've used what's called the hexagonal architecture for this project. I wanted to learn the technique as I've been kind of building this out. But yeah, I built everything that I'm about to show, or the vast majority of it, was built by myself without using AI for most of the code. And I kind of, where AI came into it, and as I'll kind of show, I already had some established patterns. Like, I'm a very strong believer in certain things in development, like test-driven development. I like doing things like pairing, kind of XP, extreme programming practices, I guess you'd call them. And as you'll see, I've taken the TDD stuff and a lot of this kind of extreme programming, kind of these kind of concepts, and moved it into this kind of world where I found that these techniques seem to be making a really big difference. So so the app itself, it's the very kind of first version of it. The idea is that users are going to log in only via GitHub, because it's a developer tool. And what I'm going to do is users can create a workspace. Within a workspace, you have projects, and within projects, you have contexts. and then the context and the projects can have bookmarks associated with them. And I'm going to build out a lot more after that, but that's kind of where I am at the moment. That's like the starting point. So to give you an idea, a workspace would be, that might be a team workspace, right? And then a project within that might be a web application that you're building. And then a context within that might be certain tickets that you've been playing, or whatever you want, really. And the idea is that you would store these kind of bookmarks, because I hit this problem where, in the place that I'm contracting right now, there's so many channels, so many things you have to remember for different contexts, and I keep losing bookmarks and things like that. And I work on one app and I forget where the logs live for that app in Azure or whatever, and I can always find them again, but it just takes me time. And I just thought, I could build a little thing that would help with that. So I was using AI in here, past few weeks, Claude Code, and it wasn't great. What I was seeing consistently was that it would go kind of off the beaten track. It would do more than I wanted it to do. It would change tons of stuff. It would leave my code in a broken state, which was just like a pain in the backside for me. As I say, I'm a strong believer in like test-driven development. Why do I care about test-driven development? Because it puts you into a really fast feedback loop when you're actually developing. Well, the way that I usually develop, you can see this big screen, and hopefully you can read, the code. Well, I'll have some code in here in a minute, but I normally have like my terminal open here like this, and I'll be running the tests in real time, like in the terminal as I'm doing code. So as I write some code, I hit save and the tests run instantly, and I get feedback in seconds, right? And I want to know if I broke something. I want to know within a few seconds that I broke something. I want to know what I broke. I want to know why that matters from a business point of view. So I have certain quite strong opinions about how tests should work, right? I don't like tests that are tightly coupled to implementation details. Find them pretty much useless. There might be some edge cases where that's okay. If you're testing things like caching, for example, that's you're going to have to test internals, and sometimes that you might have some edge cases. But by and large, I want the test to help me to make changes to my code over time. Any test that gets in the way of that is a pain in the backside, and I don't like it. And I don't want to sit there having to manually go through stuff and remember stuff. And I just want to hit a button, and if the tests come back as green, we should be confident enough to go all the way to production. That's the mentality I have, and it's perfectly possible to get there. And people who say that it's not, well, it is. And you maybe just haven't seen it. So you're fine if you're skeptical. That's absolutely fine. But I've been there so many times. So what I started doing was I started seeing these, it going off the beaten track and it leaving the code in a broken state and all of this. And I was like, well, this isn't useful to me. And then I found out about Claude MD files, right? And so I created this Claude MD file that I have got set up. Let me show you. I've got it set up in my, it's like a global Claude MD file. So it's installed in my system. I actually have like automation around all of this stuff, where, if I update this file, it'll update on my system and all of that. And I can carry these dot files and all of my configs and everything with me wherever I go. But you can see here that what I've done is I've kind of taken these principles that I found that have worked for me over many years and many different projects, and I've kind of applied them and put it into this Claude MD file. So you can see here I'm telling it, test behavior, not implementation, write your test first. I'm telling it all rules about, types and so on. No unit test. This term is not helpful. Tests should verify expected behavior, treating implementation as a black box. Test through the public API exclusively. All of this stuff, right? I'm telling it, these are the patterns I like to see. Here's a good thing. Here's a bad thing. Use Zod for schema first development, all of this kind of stuff. I added to this just a few hours ago and the file is getting very big. I will say that, and that might be a problem. Very much a work in progress. I'm just gonna show you on this call. I'm going to build a new feature in the app, only in the API side for now. But I'm going to show you enough so you get a flavor of like how this has been working, and we can see. And it's just going to be warts and all. If it doesn't work, I'll show you that. But it has been working really well for me, so I'll show it to you. But the stuff I added today was all this refactoring stuff I've added in, which I'm not going to read through now. But basically, I'm telling it when you get to in the TDD flow, the way TDD works is it's always one test at a time. You write a single test, you see that test fail. For me, the tests are always written against behaviors, so it's never, internals really. There is actually an exception in this app actually, but I will show you why, and there's a clear reason for that. But yeah, by and large, that's how I do it. And then, so TDD, you start with failing test, you see that test go green, and then if the test passes, usually I'll commit in a working state, and then I'll see, is there any opportunity to refactor? Can I clean anything up? It's quite nice when you do TDD. It's another reason I love it is that you can split up the, the solving of the problem from like just solving the problem so it works, or your solution works. You can split that up and making the problem neat and tidy, the discrete steps, right? And it's a beautiful technique, and it works absolute wonders, and it should be dominant in the industry, and it isn't, and that's a travesty. But there you go. But what I found, so like when I'm doing it, it's always one test at a time. What you'll probably see here is when I've told Claude to do TDD, even though my rules do say go one test at a time, what I've seen it do quite often is it will write all the tests in one go. Now that's not really TDD by the book. It's not how you should do it when you're doing it manually. But it seems to work quite well for Claude, and the reason that I'm still kind of okay with that, at least for now, when Claude does it, is because I think there's two main things I get out of Claude taking this kind of test first approach, even if it's all the tests in one go. And that is, first of all, the tests help to constrain the LLM quite heavily, right? Because it's basically told, your task here is to get those tests to pass and nothing more. You don't do anything more. You don't embellish, you don't add anything. Your job is to make these tests fail based on this behavior that we're asking for, and you now have to make the test pass. So that's the first thing, and you'll see that hopefully in action in a sec. And then it also gives it, of course, an automated way to verify its own work. And so it also has rules in place to to run all the tests before any commit, and it's told to work in small increments. So the idea is that, again, in this kind of like XP sense, and the way that I massively prefer to work is you work in small, demonstrably, like provably, verifiably known good states, and you go from one verified known good state to another in short succession. So if you break something, you find out quickly, you can roll back easy. You don't go like 2 weeks, working on something. You don't even go more than a few hours. But normally it's within minutes that I see something work, and I commit and so on. Anyway, so I know I'm talking a lot, but I wanted to give some of the context here. Anyway, so what I've got, this is my global Claude MD. And then in my project, now my project is not open source, but what I am going to do, I am fully aware that I'm on a video and you're going to see some of the code. At the moment, it's not open source, and it's mostly because like at some point I might try and, put a subscription in here for people. And so like there'll be, it might make me a little bit of money, which would be awesome. I am just playing about with it right now, but like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about that. And so I'm not really open sourcing it right now. However, you're going to see code. I'll just click around and you'll see code. So, then there's a Claude MD file in the project itself. So the way this kind of works is Claude will read my global settings that I've just kind of shown on the screen, and that is publicly available. You can go to my GitHub, go to my dot files and see it. And the project itself has this kind of setup. Now, Claude did an excellent job of setting this up itself. Like most of this, it just figured out itself. You can see secrets on my screen, but these are just for the record that I'm on the while I'm on the call. These are not real anything. It's just gibberish that I'm using for local development. These are all going to get removed. And yeah, it's just local dev. But anyway, as you can see, oh yeah, the key thing here as well, and I was using the Claude GUI for this quite heavily, is I'm using building across an architecture called the hexagonal architecture. Now, I don't massively want to go into all the detail of that on this call because it's not really the point of it. But the main thing to kind of mention, because it'll be relevant when it starts doing its thing, is the way it kind of works. You can read up on hexagonal architecture, but the way it kind of works, this is a monorepo. So each one of these folders inside this packages folder is effectively like a separate package, and the apps then kind of import the packages as if they were completely separate. And the way that this kind of works, the hexagon, the inner hexagon, it's where your kind of domain logic kind of lives, your business domain logic. You don't leak that out to the outer layers at all. So I have like a Hono. Hono is similar to Express. It's a bit newer than Express. I have this kind of Hono API, like HTTP API. And my inner hexagon, where all the business logic lives, doesn't know anything about that. Okay, and now I'm not going to go into all the detail about it, but basically there's these multiple layers, and we've got clear rules around where everything lives. And the hexagon owns internal to the hexagon anything that it needs to interact with, whether it's kind of incoming stuff or outgoing stuff. We have these kind of explicit ports. Ports are all kind of interfaces. So just to kind of show you one here, here's an example of a port. I'll zoom in a little bit. This is, well, I've called it for persisting context. So exactly that. But I'm not going to go massively into the detail on this. It's just, so you know that there are these kind of multiple layers and clear rules around where stuff lives. And Claude MD in the project has, that's my global one, sorry. The Claude MD in the project has got all the instructions on that. But I also have, like, along the way, me and Claude have been building up these extra docs as well. I've got some ADRs in here, so like these are decisions around how things work. So here's how controllers need to be tested, all of this kind of stuff, and then testing architecture, testing quick reference, and it knows to, or it should know to reference these documents when it's doing specific things as well. Okay, so let's get to it. Yeah, you're not going to see much front end stuff here. We're going to focus on the back end. And what I've got here is I've got a bunch of issues that I've just kind of created mostly on the fly. Claude has helped me create some of these as well. Again, I'll zoom in inside GitHub here. Now, this is kind of a work in progress, something that I've been doing. And actually, the video I originally recorded was implementing these two pieces of functionality here. But I'm going to get Claude now to do, I guess I'll just get it to do this first one because, I could do two, but, it doesn't matter. I'll just get it to do this first one to constrain the scope. So let's, so what I'm going to do straight away, okay, so I've got in my terminal, if you see here, I'm going to create a branch. It usually creates a branch itself, but I'll tell it to do it itself. And let me just do one other thing. I'm going to clear off these other branches that I don't need anymore. They're all gone. And maybe I'll use source tree just to make this a bit visual. So it looks like I'm doing branchy stuff here, but I'm really not. I just need to delete some remote branches, but fine. Let's just go here and just focus on this. So here's our current branch. We're on main. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Claude here. I'll zoom in a little bit. Now, the first thing to mention, I'll just split this fully left and right like that. Hang on, let me get my IDE here. Get rid of all this rubbish. Too much stuff open. That's just the story of my life. Right, so first thing to mention here, and look, at the time of recording, I'm very much experimenting with this stuff myself. I'm just going to, it's like kind of warts and all. I'm just going to show you what I'm experiencing. But straight away, you can see I'm getting 2 warnings here because my Claude MD file, my global one that is in GitHub, is quite big. And so is the project one. I am going to look at how I can do something about that soon. I've got an idea in terms of what I'm thinking of doing, actually, is having some very kind of to the point bullet points that then link off to sub-documents and breaking out smaller documents from the main one, and that way telling Claude to kind of look where it needs to for that specific piece of work and therefore not need the whole context. But right now it's just kind of all dumped in one big file. I am paying for Claude Max, and actually I'm paying for the really big version of Claude Max now because I've been so impressed with it. I went to the 5 Max. I did hit the limits a few times, and then I just thought, you know what, I'm getting so much value, so I just went to the 20 times max. So probably why I'm not really experiencing the issue so much. So what I'm going to do as well, if you see here, there's a shift tab. Can you see here? Plan mode. See that? So shift tab gives me plan mode. So I'm going to start by telling it that there's this GitHub issue here, which is because it can access GitHub. So I'm just going to say, go to GitHub and read issue 94 using GH. That's the command line version of GitHub. I don't want you to implement everything on this page for now. Let's focus on, and I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to grab this one. You can actually, to be perfectly honest, like you could quite easily just tell it to do like all, just do this chunk or whatever. But like, I'm going to keep it focused. So I'm just going to do that. I don't want you to, let's focus on, so what's this project ID? Bookmarks, get all the bookmarks in a project. I'm going to say, normally I don't really, well, I'll just give it that actually. Let's see how much context, because it's going to give us a plan anyway. So it's not going to actually start writing code. Yep. So now I've seen it do this a few times. Why is it? Okay. Why is it not? It's interesting. Is it able to read it? Oh, there you go. It's got it. I don't know what it was doing there. Okay. So straight away, let me examine the current code base to understand the existing bookmark implementation and schema. So now it already knows as well that, look, it's looking for domain logic. So it's using the terminology of the project here. Let me examine the existing bookmark implementation to understand what's already there, by all means. So what we're going to get here, because plan mode is turned on, it's not going to edit any code yet. It's going to give us a plan and it's going to output it to the terminal. And now look what it's reading. Oh yes, I've got sub Claude MD files in each project. So you can see here the Hono project, which is our API. It's going to be editing. It's read that. And I think just to show you here, if I go in the code in GitHub, and if I see apps, and if I go to Hono, Claude MD, and I think if because it's not very comprehensive here, but it says please kind of go up, do you know what I mean, and refer to that. And yeah, I'm using Cloudflare under the hood. I've also got, while it's doing all this, I've got full, I've got a pretty decent pipeline considering it's a personal project. Whenever I push a pull request, it creates a kind of test environment for me, which does all the deployments in Cloudflare, and I can access it. And then when I merge the code, it does a production deployment to like a prod environment, even though there is no I've got no consumers right now, but I do have a prod environment and I'm deploying to it since day one, and it works. So let's see what this is going to ask us now. Tell us, sorry. So plan to implement. Yep, I'll implement the endpoint to retrieve all bookmarks. One thing that I care about here is I want it to do pagination, but I didn't ask for that. But look, it's already picked that up. I was hoping it would, because that's one of the reasons I didn't ask it to, was I was hoping it would scan through the code and understand that that's what we're doing elsewhere. So, and it has done that. Okay, so let's just see. So I'll implement the endpoint to retrieve all bookmarks in a project following the existing patterns in the code base. This involves domain layer, hexagon package, business logic, repository layer, that's the driven adapters package, controller layer, that's our Hono app, and the tests at each layer following TDD. Good. What it's going to do, so it's going to go to, it's going to add to for managing bookmarks. So that is absolutely what I want it to be doing. So if I go into here, I'll zoom in a bit. Hopefully you can read this okay. So where are we? Sorry. What are we looking at? We're looking at, so inside hexagon, we've got source, we've got, sorry, what am I looking at again? Domain layer, for managing bookmarks. That's going to be for managing bookmarks. That's here. So this is what already exists. Now, again, you don't need to know about hexagonal architecture too much, in general, but like we're defining ports here for the kind of outside world, and we have our business rules here as well. So that's good. It's going to say, it's going to create a new interface here, get bookmarks by project, or a new and it's going to, it knows, so it's going to pass user ID, project ID, and it knows that we're going to paginate that. We have an existing type for that. Then it's going to update bookmark management. So that is our actual bookmark management is in here. That's our actual that's inside our domain, and this is where we have domain logic. It's one of the things I'm starting to really like actually about the hexagonal architecture approach, is that you end up with this it's early days for me, but like what I'm seeing is that you get this very clean layer that is just focused on business logic, and that's what this is here. And it's, so things like this business logic here, where I'm saying, this thing has to exist, this user has to have access to this thing. If I wanted to change my API, if I wanted to change my database, so I was using some completely different database. So say I wanted to do local, I wanted to have an offline version with SQLite. I could absolutely do that by just implementing a different repository, because it would just have to implement the API. Anyway, I'm taking my time here, so I'll go through this a bit more quickly. But essentially, you can see it's doing everything. It seems to be planning in the right order as well, because we start the domain layer. We move up to the repository layer. The repository layer will need to have integration style tests. So it's got that. Yeah, integration tests use I'll tell it to continue, and I'll explain as I'm doing it. But look, and you can see here, there's a response format. That's exactly how I want it to look, exactly like that. Yep. So I'm going to continue. Yeah. So the integration testing technique that I have, I'm using test containers with Docker under the hood, and I've got what I think is a really nice pattern for that, and I'll show some of that along the way. Again, even though this might be a proprietary thing, eventually I don't mind sharing the code here on a call, and it's going to change over time anyway. So what's it doing now? So you can see here, it's writing the domain tests. So it's going to write them all up front. So to be clear on this one, that's not really TDD. It's not actually how TDD should work, right? TDD is one test at a time, and it's always one test at a time. I know some people who, write multiple tests up front and say that works for them, and that's fine. But to be clear, that's not test-driven development. It's fine if it works for you, but it's not TDD. And the reason that distinction doesn't matter maybe so much here as we're doing this, but for an LLM. But the reason it matters for mere mortals is that TDD is really all about the cycle that flow gets you into. It's a really fast, rapid feedback loop where you find out in seconds if you broke something, and you get this really high confidence. it's an amazing technique. Well, let's see what it's doing. So, auto accept is turned on. I didn't realize that. I actually generally don't leave that on. I might leave it on for now. We'll just kind of, because part of it's for brevity. I guess, you know what I might do? I might just temporarily, I think if I just do that, that turns auto accept off, I think. So I think it will now need to ask me. I didn't realize it asked me, can I turn auto accept on before? And I think I just click yes. What I generally do, I mean, sometimes I do that, but I quite like following it along the way. So here we go. Now it's asking me. Now this is a really noddy kind of thing because yeah, it's just an import. That's fine. Just put it in. I do sometimes just accept what it's doing. So the other thing that it should be doing as well is it should be committing often as it goes along. Oh, hang on, what have we got here? Total pages. Where is it doing this? Hang on, what's this? Get bookmarks by projects. Domain. Okay, no, it looks okay, I think. Total pages. If total is 0. Oh, okay. Yeah, and you see it's following my rules quite heavily here. You don't see any kind of mutation going on or anything like this. I'm going to just, you know, I'm just going to let it continue for now, and we'll go through and we'll kind of assess the tests afterwards. But what it is doing, it's already written some tests, right? Now, as I say, this isn't really TDD. It's taking the test first flow, but the reason that at the moment I'm okay with it doing things this way, because the main thing that I'm trying to get out of pushing it down this road is I want it to constrain what it's doing. That is, I don't want it to do more than it needs to do, or start embellishing, or, you know, oh, I thought you'd want this kind of change. It seemed to just do that all the time previously. And I want it to have a verifiable way of knowing that the work it's just done has worked. And you know, it seems to do quite a good job when it just writes the test. Now, it's one of those things that, like, if I start seeing that I start finding gaps and stuff in the test, then I'm going to be even stricter and start making it go, no, you actually have to go one test at a time. Now, the interesting thing here is the way, let's talk about this code a little bit. The way I normally kind of test stuff is I don't test internals almost at all. But there's a kind of exception here because of the hexagonal architecture approach, because the way that the hexagonal architecture thing is supposed to work, and then, like, the real advantage that you get, you're supposed to end up with this kind of domain layer that is completely detached from the outside world, whether it's the kind of inputs coming from, say, an API or a user interface, and the output, which might be going off to some database or some other API or some event service or whatever it is, right? And the way that kind of works is the hexagon itself, the kind of inner core, dictates the interfaces for input and output, here called driven and driving ports, to the outside world. So these are owned by the kind of inner core, and so for that reason, it took me a while to really figure out how I was going to test this, because normally, like, I'm kind of tempted to say, just test it through the layer where it gets used and forget about having any internal tests at all. That's my kind of usual way of thinking about these things. So to that end, I would basically just have what most people would refer to as integration tests. I would have them just at the kind of app level. So where this is like my user interface, which we're not really going to look at, and this is the API, and I would just have it there using kind of Docker in this instance, and just basically firing requests against the API, and having Docker under the hood set to whatever I need to as I'm kind of working my way through stuff. The reason that I've not done it that way, and I've actually got the tests in the hexagon itself, is because conceptually, like, my mental model of how this works is that you're building up this kind of inner core, which represents all the business logic. It's the inner core determines the input and output interfaces, so it owns them. And therefore, because the whole value is that you want this kind of business logic that's completely decoupled from the outside world, input wise or output wise, it's perfectly appropriate there to test like the inner core in isolation. And to do that, because you control the interfaces, it seems actually perfectly fine to deal with mocks in the code at that level. But that's because there's a specific reason for that, you know. And then I still have the test at the outer level, because that's where you're actually implementing the thing. Now, you might say, well, you've got duplicate testing there, but think of it another way. Given this approach that I'm taking now, it's one of the reasons I think it's a nice design and a nice architecture is, say in the future. So right now I'm building a Tori app, which is similar to Electron. If I was building well, at the same time, I could say, you know what, I love, as you can see, I like the command line, right? Maybe I want a command line interface to this thing. Well, I could build a command line interface relatively easily, because what I would do is you build the kind of UI for the CLI, but you just you communicate to the inner business logic using the ports that are exposed, and that way I can build a completely different UI. It's not that difficult. Another example I gave before, and I actually was doing this at one point, but I changed for various reasons. But I could say, okay, well, I want a completely offline version of this as well, but it still need a database. But I could use SQLite, and so it gives me these. I think it's like a hallmark of, in my opinion, kind of good design is that you're not painting yourself into any corners, right? And I'm just kind of talking through all this as you see, it's doing its thing. So what it's doing now, sorry, I'm not really talking about the main thing, but what it's doing now is it's running tests and it's testing the work that it's done. So you can see here, look, almost there's one failure related to the unauthenticated case. Our message shows it's returning 500, blah, blah, blah. It's fixing it now. And hopefully it's been committing along the way, and it has. Oh, has it? Has it? Actually hasn't, which is kind of annoying. Usually, it does commit along the way, so I'll maybe just tell it off a little bit for that. But I mean, it looks like it's just going to build the whole feature. To be fair, I'm normally asking it to build, features that are maybe a little bit more involved than this. It's kind of constrained, and I guess what it's trying to do here is get the full thing working for every layer, and then it's going to commit. So maybe it's not so bad actually in this instance. I don't know. I still probably would prefer smaller commits, just get the domain test working, then do the next bit, then do the next bit. I'd prefer that actually. But as you can see here, like, I mean, you can't really tell because I kind of squash commits in the end when I merge against main, but you can see that well, normally what happens is I get these small commits along the way. As you can see, it's not quite done that this time, but we'll see where we end up. Yeah, so it's still trying to figure this out. And I think what I'm going to do in a minute and sorry, the other thing to show you as well, I have the to test and to just verify everything's working. I actually have this Bruno collection here. So Bruno, if you're not familiar with it, is it's like a Postman style client. But the really nice thing about Bruno is that everything can be committed in version control. So tools like, because it's just right into the file system, tools like Claude can actually help you with your API collections as well. And so what it will actually do, or it should do, is it should create an API collection for us, or add to the existing collection for bookmarks at the end. I think it did say it was going to do that. If I scroll all the way, it should have done, because it is it going to do that? Testing strategy. It actually hasn't said that. Well, I'll ask it to do that. Yeah, it would normally. it would normally mention that it was going to do that. You can kind of queue up commands as well. So what's it doing here? Hang on a second. So integration tests. That's kind of interesting. Oh, okay. Create multiple bookmarks sequentially to ensure order. That's kind of interesting because I didn't ask it to do that. Let's see where this takes us. Yeah, so now, oh yes, I have a command. There's a pipeline check command. Why is it not finding that? Oh, was I? Oh God, I think I might know why it's not picked up some of the commands, possibly because I think I might have been running this from a subfolder. I just realised that, but it's fine. We'll get it to fix the issues. We'll get it to write the Bruno collection as well. Okay. Yeah, so I'll talk through the code in a minute. I'll talk through what it's done because I can see what it's doing here. But we'll go through it. We'll verify. We're gonna check the tests. Now, one thing that I'm in the process of adding, but it's not fully how I want it right now, so I can't actually show it right now because it's not fully there. But I am planning to add mutation testing as part of this process. And so what mutation testing will do is it's like a way of kind of automatically testing your tests, if that makes sense. So the way that would work is it will say if you've got some log, create a special offer if the basket amount is greater than $100, whatever. It will automatically run those tests with it'll change it to like less than and equals and all of that kind of stuff, and it'll try putting empty strings into things or passing null where it shouldn't be and all that kind of stuff. Inverting if statements and things like that, and where you don't get a failing test, it will consider that to be a mutant, and it will say you've been left with these mutants. Now, I want to add that for obvious, hopefully fairly obvious reasons here, because it's doing quite a lot here, and I need to know that I can trust the test, because I still want this attitude, this approach where I can just click a button, and if the test pass, I should be confident enough to go to production. And I really believe that very strongly. It's funny, it's actually taken quite a while, and doesn't seem to have committed along the way, which is a little bit annoying. I'm just going to say I don't think it's going to need to do multiple commits now, but I'm just going to send it this message reminder to commit small and often, always against fully working states. I'm just going to put that. It's probably not going to need to take that into account now because it's kind of done it, but yeah, generally, I mean, this is one thing to mention. Like, it's not always 100% at remembering all the rules, and sometimes it will violate the odd rule. Usually, I can tell it off in real time. Sometimes, if it doesn't seem to understand, I will kind of I use the terminology tell it off, but I will kind of tell it off and tell it to add to its kind of memory bank. So that's where it'll update the docs, maybe the Claude MD file, one or the other. But now, what's it doing? So it's going to run the pipeline checks again to see if everything passes. Yeah, so the pipeline checks, just to kind of show what happens there, it runs a bunch of checks. Where are we? Pipeline checks. So it runs the build, because the build is required to make sure all the types can speak to each other in the various packages and all of that stuff. Then it runs lint, so that will look for common errors, unused variables, things like that, common logical flow errors and stuff like that. Then it runs type check, hopefully self-explanatory, and then it runs tests. So it kind of goes through everything. So, but it does take a little bit of time to run. Shouldn't take too long. Yeah. Everything's passing. It's going to commit the work. And what we'll do, so I don't think it's added the Bruno collection, which is a little bit strange. It usually remembers to do that without me telling it to. And I am a little bit like it's not ideal that it's done all this work in one go. I will say normally it doesn't do that. I do wonder if I'm just going to try if I open up a new tab here. Was I actually in a subfolder? Because if I was, no, I wasn't actually. That's interesting. Okay, so it says here though, all tests have been completed successfully. The get endpoint is now fully implemented and all the tests are passing, but it hasn't given us a collection. So I'm going to say create a Bruno collection so I can test this new endpoint. Okay, so what should happen in a minute is I will get a new collection in here. So presumably it will place it inside the bookmarks folder here. So let's see what it's going to do. First, let me check the existing Bruno collection to follow the same pattern. Yep. Dev context bookmarks. There we go. Read the collection. Bookmarks collection. If you've never used Bruno, by the way, it's pretty awesome. As I say, we use it in the kind of gig where I am now, and it means that like one person updates, the collection. You commit it in Git, everyone can review that, or whatever, and then you can you just share it with the entire team. It's so nice. So what's it doing? It's writing get bookmarks empty project. So yeah, it usually gives you like failure cases and things like that. You can see here it's giving us with pagination, and it'll default pagination if you don't pass pagination values as well, or it should do if it's been following the rules. We're going to actually go in and look at the tests in a minute, but I like to just get a quick sense of whether it's working by just literally probing the endpoint itself. In order to do that, I need to run the dev command. But I'm not going to run it until it's finished because it usually runs the dev command itself to make sure it isn't broken, which is pretty awesome as well. Because sometimes I used to find that the dev command was broken. Oh, something just appeared there. So what are we looking for again? So yeah, well, it's all these bookmarks. It's bookmarks setup, bookmarks. Oh, is it just this one? Is that a get request? Oh no, this is, what is this one? Is that just docs? Oh, this is the docs. So what's it added? Yeah, get bookmarks success. Here we go. So these ones. So in order to, so I've seen this before where it's the naming seems a bit, it's using, I don't know why it's kind of done that. But let me see. Oh, well, I'm going to wait till it finishes. Now it's committing, you see, it's going to commit that. I think. Yeah, it's doing it. Once it's done that, I'm going to give it a second. I just realized it's on main as well. It's not created a branch, which is a bit weird. Much as I'm a fan of trunk-based development, I don't trust this to do it. So I'm going to create a branch and I'll delete where I was in main. It's interesting that it doesn't always follow exactly all the rules, but it's still done well. It appears to have done a pretty good job, but let's see. So I'm just going to create a branch for this. What shall I call this branch? I mean, I don't really. What are we doing here? So we're. I'm just going to say. I'll just call it Hano. Get bookmarks. I'm going to push that up, and then I'm also just going to delete the main branch and then check it out again. And then you should see, yeah, there we go. 1 second. Yep. Okay. So yeah, so in here, you can see that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the dev command. So pn dev, with this being a mono repo, it's going to run everything. It will pop up the UI. The UI is mostly kind of fake at the moment, as in like there's a bunch of menu items that don't do anything so far. There's a basic kind of design to it, and there's an issue at the moment. I mean, I haven't really worked on the front end other than to just get this basic kind of setup going with Tori. The front end, like as I say, I normally like doing full end-to-end stuff. Why is that not deleting? I normally like doing full vertical slices for the system, and I'm going to be moving to that pretty soon. It's more that I need to figure out when I'm using this kind of Tori app, which I'm not used to, even though it's using React and so on, and I can test for the most part the way that I want. There are some kind of Rust APIs involved, and when I was trying to get the tests working the way that I want them, I was hitting a few issues, and I don't trust the AI to get the tests right. So I want to figure out myself how to get that to the level of satisfaction that I want. And then once I've figured out those patterns, I'm going to give that to the AI and say, look, here's the rules, here's how it works, this is what you need to abide by. So that's kind of why I've not really done much on the front end yet, but it's going to come. And once I've got them patterns in place, and I've built out kind of the front end parts that interact with what I've already got in the back end, I'm then going to start doing proper vertical slices. But what does work here is there's a login with GitHub, so I can click on that now, and that should where am I? There you go. This is a genuine login with GitHub, and then I've got a auth token here, which I'm going to grab. And what am I going to do? I'm going to go into Bruno, and I'm going to need to update. So I need to go in here, and I need to paste that in as my auth token. And then I should be able to go in here. So I'm going to create a workspace. So if you remember, I said workspaces, workspaces, so it can contain projects. So now what that's going to do, it stores the workspace ID. It annoys me how the workspace ID is like camel case, and yeah, that I'm going to tell it to fix that later, but you know, but this workspace ID is one we just created. So now I can create a test project that goes inside the workspace, and then I can also create context. They go inside the project. That's fine. And now the thing that's brand new, the endpoint it's just created is, so I could already create a bookmark. That's the bookmark creation, which can live in projects and context, was what was created on the previous recording, which actually went a bit smoother than this one. This is still looking good so far. But yeah, that was what was created before. But now I've done that. So now what I should be able to do, this now should get all the bookmarks, I believe. Interesting. So it gets all the bookmarks. So that gets all the bookmarks, for the project, right? So project-based bookmarks, and I've got so now if I create another one inside, and you can see the pagination. So page 1, total pages 1, total items 1. So now if I say I want to go to create another bookmark, so let's create multiple. I don't know if this is gonna, I can try it. Oh, it did random int. I don't know where do I set that? Is that going to be in vars here? Or is it just literally a random value? Let's do that again. I don't know exactly how that works. I guess I'll ask it later. But I mean, to be honest, in all honesty, I do check these things properly, so I will look into that. And I don't like allowing things that I don't understand in the project, so I'm kind of joking when I say that. But oh no, I think it's just giving it a random title, isn't it? Is that, yeah, that's all it is. Create multiple, but I see. Yeah, it's a random in. Okay, I get it. Yeah, I get it. It's just basically I can just fire loads of requests and it's gonna create random ones with different names. That's what that does. But that's that's pretty cool actually, because now I can do that. See, a bunch of times. And now when I go here with you should see, yeah. So now we've got a bunch of these items, and we have got, Jesus, did I make that many? 29? I must have clicked quite a few times there. Page size 20, total pages 2. So there should be 20 items in there, but so now we've got this option with pagination, and it sets some values. It said this is going to be page 2, page size is going to be 5. So I should have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And look, page 2, page size 5, total pages 6, total items 29. It's looking pretty good to me. Unauthenticated, so it gives you these kind of, there we go. So authentication is required. And what's it done there? It's just no auth. I also, just to prove, like if I go in here and let's just temporarily, I'll go in and change my auth token so it's not completely valid. Just add like an X at the beginning or something. Just add an X at the beginning. If I do that, hang on, did I? That shouldn't work. Let me try that again. Did I need to save that? Oh, it didn't save. I don't need to actually hit save. Okay, there you go, invalid token. Okay, put that back, get rid of the X, save, boom. Cool. Yeah, and it's even got rules for invalid pagination because it's copied these from elsewhere. So page 0 is not a thing. Fail to retrieve bookmarks. Yeah, looks good. So now let's take a look at how it's tested stuff, right? So I mean, I realize I'm nearly an hour in, but this is the good stuff, right? So let's how are we going to do that? So another thing, sorry, and this is going to be useful as well to us. I'm going to go into my context folder. I'm going to push this as it is. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a PR, and I've also got because I'm so like enamored with Claude, I've also got a separate instance of Claude that will now review the PR and check that we have no violations. So we're not violating the rules of hexagonal architecture and we've tested properly and all of that stuff. So you should see in a second, there we go, Claude Code is working. This is a separate instance of Claude Code. And funnily enough, it sometimes finds stuff and then I feed that back into this. So we'll just wait. You'll see in a minute. Just give it a second. You'll see a checkbox list of stuff that it needs to check for that is relevant to my project. And I can show you where those live. So just quickly, if I go into here and if I look at Claude YAML. Hey, look. Review progress, read domain layer implementation, review repository implementation, analyze controller, check integration, test patterns, evaluate architecture compliance, assess code quality standards, review security and error handling, provide specific feedback with line numbers. And where did I put those rules? They're all kind of in here, these custom instructions. What's also interesting is I'm just such a fanboy of Claude, but I came to Claude GUI for this, and what I did was I pasted in all the kind of documentation, the relevant documentation, and I told it, help me come up with a good, a good set of instructions for the review in the PR. So we'll come back to this soon. It'll update shortly. So in the meantime, we're going to check ourselves. So let's have a look here. So this looks like a lot of files changed, but to be fair, a lot of it is the Bruno collection. You can see that is quite a lot of, it takes up a bulk of it. So what have we got here? We have got these aggregates, right? So we'll start on the very lowest level, right? So at the very lowest level, I'm going to move this. I'm going to flip this back to this side. I'm going to have this here. I'm going to keep this open. This is my dev command. I can turn that off for now. What I will do is I'm going to go into packages, hexagon. Now, if I run pn test here, it's going to run these in a watch mode. So these are the kind of more unit style tests. Now, bear in mind, I've got all these rules saying I don't like unit style tests, but I have explained why I think it's okay in this project. And I hope that makes sense because, you should understand why you're following rules and you can break them if it makes sense, if you understand the reasoning behind it, right? So anyway, what are we looking at here? So we're looking at the bookmark management. So let's go, what I'll do. So I'm going to do a kind of manual form of mutation testing just to get my confidence high with this. So hopefully this will be automated soon, but for now I'll do it kind of manually. So we need to go into, we're not in the app yet. We're going to go into our packages. We're going to go into our hexagon. We're going to go in here, domain. We're going to go in aggregates. And I believe it's here, bookmark management. And the actual, it was this, right? Get bookmarks by project. So I really, I like the way that this thing works. I'll maybe explain that in a bit. It's quite clever how this thing works. But I'm going to say, all right, we'll start here with if the project doesn't exist, we should throw an error. And there we go, straight away. To see how quick the feedback is. When you're doing TDD, normally I'm not, this is quite new to me, having robots do this for me, right? Normally that's the kind of speed that I get feedback when I'm just doing my work. So my normal flow is, I'll be doing, I'll be writing, I'll have my tests here like this, and then I have the code on this side, and I'll literally, make a change, hit save, boom, passed. Go like that. Here's a feature I didn't know, I've forgotten. I did it 6 months ago. I can't remember what it's there for. So I delete that code. Oh, hang on. What for broken? Oh, it should throw an error when a project doesn't exist. Oh, right. Okay. So that use case isn't being handled. That's the level of speed and the level of confidence that I'm used to and I want. And that's what TDD gives you. There's a lot of people online who are pretty clueless when it comes to TDD, who think it's useless and they just don't understand it. This is the value that you actually get, right? It's a really fast feedback loop. Anyway, has access. So here, let's prove. I'm gonna again. So let's see that. Okay, should throw an error when a user does not have access to project. Now I'm gonna try something. What if I pass in just like any old string here? Look, I think I found an issue. That is interesting. See, it's normally better at doing that. Why is it? Okay, see, but that's yeah, that's a problem. I don't like that. Bookmark management. Okay. I did exactly this in the previous video that I was recording, and it did catch those issues. So it's interesting. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically go back to Claude here, and I'm going to tell it that I found a problem, and I'm going to tell it, look, this is unacceptable. You need to solve this, and there should be no gaps like this. This is why I want mutation testing, and this is why even when the tool can speed us up in this way, you've got to be thorough about this stuff, because bear in mind, if I do manual code changes, I'm trusting the tests. Also, if you want the value from this tool and you don't want to introduce bugs, you've got to be really careful, right? Because it's essential that you can trust the feedback from the tests. So if I can do that, that's a big problem. Now, to be clear, I have a habit of checking these things, but actually usually it's been pretty good. So kind of surprised to see that. But again, I said this would be warts and all, so fine. So I'm going to tell it off though. So I can change the values of user ID and project ID on line 110 in bookmark management.ts to be arbitrary strings, and the tests still pass. I'm going to just check one thing, because I did change it to user ID, and it could be sheer coincidence that it's using that value. So let's just no, it's not. You can see it still still pass when it shouldn't. Okay, and the test still pass. This is, I'm just going to say, completely unacceptable. I can't spell unacceptable, but I'm sure it'll figure it out. This is completely unacceptable and violates our testing principles. Fix this gap, but deeply understand. Somebody told me if you tell it to deeply understand, it helps, and it does seem to. Deeply understand how this has happened and assess all the tests we have added to make sure this cannot happen again. I don't want to find any gaps. The testing must be trust. No, 1 second. No. We must be able to have complete confidence in our tests, so they must fail when the logic is clearly broken. That's actually broken. Interestingly, if it had been going one test at a time, it probably would have picked that up. So that's something to bear in mind. And maybe I need to be a bit sterner when it does, kind of all these tests. To be fair, it has been pretty good so far for me. This is turning into a longer video than I was expecting, but I've been talking quite a lot. But let's see how this goes. So it should figure this out. I'm just going to let it do its thing. Do I want to proceed? Yes. I see the critical issue. The mock repository online 12. This is a problem when you rely on mocks, which means it always returns true. Yep. Completely wrong. Our tests are not actually verifying the correct user ID. Yep. Yep. Yeah, that'll do it. This is why mocks are a bit dangerous, but again, we have a good reason to use them here. We just need to be careful to make sure that the logic is in place. And again, when you actually go properly test first as an actual human being, you're going to spot these things because you should see the test fail. So look, this line of code here, when I add this, I want to see it fail first. Do you see what I mean? So it's that expectation, and so I think maybe I need to tweak this a little bit, and maybe I do need to be a bit more, stern with it. Yes, you actually need to go one test at a time. It's probably a better way as well, because I think we'll get smaller commits that way. To be fair, my rules do state that, but it doesn't always do it, which yeah, it's not ideal, but we're learning as we go here. And hopefully you can see, though, I mean, there's still a ton of value that I've got from this. Like, it's gone through all these different layers. Let's be clear. It's gone through my domain layer. It's gone through my repository layer. And the repository layer, we're going to test that as well in a second. But the repository layer, driven adapters, repositories, it's going to be in here. And it'll probably be this. And we'll have a similar looking thing in here somewhere. Say, but notice how it seems to have got a lot of stuff right here. So, for example, it's not adding any business logic in here, right? We do have some very basic ordering in here, but I've got a kind of ticket that I'm going to play, or maybe Claude will play, I don't know, that that will make the ordering something that we can determine through our kind of interfaces. See how, like now, see how I'm actually running these tests at the same time, and it's failing them. Now, was it doing it deliberately to make it fail? Because that's kind of, oh, did it just fail? Look at that. Now let me test that swapping the parameters would cause the test to fail. So it was literally doing that here. Look, let me temporarily modify the implementation to swap the parameters. It's so clever. It's just so good. I mean, it's not perfect. You can see that, and I'm happy to kind of share where things are not perfect. But this is a million miles away from it going in and just changing a billion things, and me not knowing what's what. Do you know what I mean? But you can see how as well, and I'm a very experienced software engineer, and I know what I need to look for, and I know that I need to prove that the tests are good. And if they're not, I'm going to find them, and I'm going to prevent that from getting into my code base. Also, why I'm going to add mutation testing. As I said, I actually had mutation testing kind of working. It was working for the domain layer actually here, but not for the integration test, which we're using Docker, and there's some kind of issue with it. So I've kind of put that on hold a little bit, but clear value to it because it would have picked that up. It's exactly what it would have picked up. But where are we? So, get bookmarks by project. Is that the one? Yeah, this is what it's done, and it's got limit and offset. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the thing that I mean, the thing is so the repository here, the way that this is being tested, this is a pattern that I'm really kind of happy with, actually. And this is not something that Claude came up with. It's something that I've been doing for a while. I really don't like tests that you sometimes see them where you'll have like kind of let variables in the test where you have like you'll kind of mutate some kind of shared config or some kind of shared. It creates this potential for shared state between tests when you start doing things like that. Here, what I want to do is I want a clean database for every test. So what I actually do, and this again is from me, this isn't from Claude, is I create this higher order function called with test containers. And what this does under the hood is it creates a new Postgres container. And then we run some database migrations. It goes through, not test func, where is it? Test DB. It basically creates a new clean instance of every for every test. And then what happens is in your test itself, you run with test containers, and then all the code within here is kind of scoped to a completely unique database instance, which is extremely powerful. And then I do the same thing, another function helper called with test containers in the Hono layer, but the Hono layer does some kind of extra stuff. So I have some quite what I think is really neat stuff in here. So if I go to where is it? Test helpers database. Yeah, so I've got so the way that this kind of works at the Hono level, I do some extra stuff. So I want to be able to prove things like if one authenticated user can't access another user's workspaces unless they have permission. And so I have this way of dynamically allowing each test to pass in, to basically say, give me an extra user in the database, and it will just dynamically create it for you, and that kind of runtime. Okay, so what's it done here? So, and it should have committed. Let's have a look at that commit. Cool. Oh, and at the same time, what I'll do, I'll push that up actually, and we'll take a look at what the PR came back with as well. Just one second. Okay, push force. So if I go to here, that'll take me to the GitHub PR. What's it saying? Overall assessment excellent. Thanks, Claude. Patting yourself on the back a bit. Domain layer excellence. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Oh, so one thing to mention, my error handling, I'm not happy with the way errors are dealt with in this code base at the moment. I've got a separate kind of ticket to really clean up the error handling. So as long as it's kind of in there at the moment and tested, I'm allowing some what I think is fairly nasty patterns for error handling, but also I don't have structured logging in there yet, and I want to add that pretty soon as well, so it's properly in there. Efficient pagination, it seems to be happy. Look at this. The implementation correctly treats bookmarks as part of the project aggregate, maintaining proper DDD boundaries as specified in ADR 003. So look at this. If we go in ADR 003, we have an ADR here that basically explains how aggregates work and all of this kind of stuff. And I've got nice little diagrams and all of that stuff, which again, it helped me draw. Can I render them? There you go. Doesn't look good with my theme, but you get the idea. Claude helped me with all this documentation as well. So yeah, I think hopefully that's enough to kind of show you, because the next steps, to be clear, I mean, maybe I can just quickly have a look at what it's done here actually in this commit. Let's tell you what, let's just check. Let's go back to the lines that we had, and we'll call it a day at this point, I think. So I'm going to go in here, and I can maximize that. So again, same thing that we were doing before, but now let's do this. It should fail, and it does. And what does it say though? I want to know. What's it doing? Yeah, so expected specific user ID, received user ID. Cool. Now this is testing internals a little bit. It's proving that this thing has been called and so on. Again, I'm normally quite against that, but there are clear reasons why, and hopefully I've explained it. You know, why I actually think it's okay, given this hexagonal architecture and given what the domain, given the boundaries of the hexagon that are explicit and all owned by the internal kind of inner core if that makes sense. So I think that's actually okay in this instance. So yeah, just for reference though, what I would be doing next and what I'll continue to do for this PR is I'm going to go in each level and do the same kind of thing. I mean, maybe I can quickly. I'm just aware that I'm like an hour and 15 minutes in. Hopefully that's enough to kind of show you. I will say that I would expect the test to be pretty good throughout each level. I'm going to look to see if I find any violations and double check that. In fact, maybe I can even ask it to just do it for me. I mean, I can do that. I'd still manually check it though. I feel like I have to do that. I mean, we can have a quick look now. I guess the drizzle. It's an interesting one. The drizzle. The repository integration test. That's one level that I wasn't sure if I even needed, because I kind of implicitly test that above. But again, if you're thinking in terms of adapters, and this is an adapter, I think it kind of makes sense to test at those boundaries probably. So that's what I'm doing right now. So if I go to, let's just have a quick look, I guess. What am I doing? Packages, and I want to go to driven adapters, and I'll run the tests. Oh no, these are integration style tests. I actually, the reason I don't normally like the distinction as well when you talk about integration tests and unit tests, but the reason there's a separate integration command here is because it has to do all this kind of orchestration with Docker and all of that stuff. So there's a slightly different setup. You can see here how it's running all these migrations. The tests are obviously a bit slower, but very powerful and very they give me a lot of confidence, these tests. To be honest, I think I probably will skip these ones though, because it's the level above that I really care about, and you do kind of implicitly test all of this anyway. So it's really at the Hono level. That's where I'm going to go, to be honest. I'm going to go to the Hono level because if there are gaps, I will find them here. So we have, what do we have? Try to think now. Bookmark integration. So one thing that's a little bit annoying is it seems like my linting rules are not being properly applied, because like these are unused variables, and they should be not unused imports, but they should be actually that should fail the build actually. Not the build, it should fail the pipeline, and it isn't doing so. I need to look into that, but that's not a Claude thing. That's a problem with my linting for some reason. Don't know if it's just because it's a test file, but I still want it to run linting against test files. So anyway, what was I looking for? So it's going to be the get. What am I doing? Get project ID bookmarks. Is that the one? Yeah, projects. Yeah, it's this one here. Should support pagination. Yeah. So if I were to go in here, so you can see here, if we look at this code. Here's our bookmark code. We do have validation here using some Zod schemas. So we're going to validate that you're passing what you should. We fail quickly if not. But the actual logic is this the get request? Hang on a sec. Projects. That's post. Let me get the get controller get. So we've got projects. Yeah, this is the one that we've just implemented. But you can see here how, like, for example, yes, I'm not keen on this. Oh, I don't like that. That's ugly. I'm gonna get rid of that. And I also don't like the error handling in general. Like, it's a bit kind of branchy, and I'm not keen on it. But as I said before, I'm gonna clean all that up soon. I'm gonna have like a single function that kind of does it, and it's gonna be a lot neater than this. But so. I'm not too worried about that. This here, though, I'm not a fan of, so I'm going to tell it not to do that. Okay, so inside, let's say, inside our bookmark controller, in bookmark controller, in the Hono app, this logic, I'm pretty sure I can just tell it to, how do we do that? I think we, context, integration context, let me see, pagination. Yeah, you can do this. You can just use the schema. Could be replaced by using our our pagination schema, take a look at how we're doing this on line 178. 178 in the context controller. To be perfectly honest, I could just make that change myself and see the test pass, but I don't know, we're all vibe coders now. No, we're not. Semantic, what's the term? Semantic diffusion. I'm using that term completely wrong. This, to be clear, is very different to the vibe coding thing. I should be very clear on that. It's as I think you can see, I'm very much aware of the code that it's producing, and I'm assessing it. And where it gets stuff wrong, I tell it, you know. And ordinarily, I'm adding more and more rules. This is horrible. I hate this. This is awful. But as I say, I've got a kind of ticket to handle this, and I will be cleaning all these errors up. But what is nice is, while the code is horrible, like, this is just nasty to me. Like, you've got like a outer if statement, you've got like a nested if statement, and I find it hard to read. It's a mess. Like, I don't like this at all. But I've got the tests in place, right? And the tests are going to help us to make these changes in the code very successfully. So it should be the case that I won't need to update pretty much any tests unless I actually change the kind of error messaging, that, you know, the actual messages that come through, or the API that gets sent back when there's an error, any of that. I shouldn't need to update the test at all, and I can clean up all this crap, because this is just, ugh, look at it, horrible. But I will be cleaning that up properly. So avert your eyes. Look, oh no, that's where we were. But look, now we've got, see, now it's done this pagination request schema, and because this is using Zod, one of the things I love about this, right, is that if you see the way this works, see the business logic, the business rules live here. We're back in the domain now. These are the business rules, but it even because it's using Zod, it's going to coerce. So whatever, if you pass a string in, it will be coerced into a number. It will become a positive integer, and it has a default value of 1. And that business logic lives in our domain, and it's going to be consumed above. So I'm guaranteed, like, if this parses successfully, it's guaranteed that this is going to be a page and page size, and it's going to be a number, and it will have default values if nothing is passed in. The reason it's in a try catch is because if this parse fails, it throws, and so you end up in here, and then you can detect what kind of error you've thrown. But again, messy, needs a proper clean. So mostly pass in, but there's a flaky test container. I've not seen that at all. I wonder if that's because I was running. It could be because I was running them at the same time. I don't know. Never seen. I'd hate flaky tests, but I don't really believe that there is a flaky test there, because I haven't seen that happen once. So what's it saying? Okay, well, I'm gonna push that. At this point, I'm going to sorry, I just want to quickly double check. Oh, it's committed, yeah, and then it's just fixed that. And what did it change here? This could be my bad. Could it be my bad? I think this is my bad. I think what happened there, yeah, it's a little bit annoying. I know what's happened there. I don't think it may not have even updated the test at all, because I've got prettier set up. I think what it's done is it's another thing. I need to tell it to run prettier after every change, before every commit, because my IDE has slightly different settings. So when I hit save, it's kind of prettifying it, and that's why you see that diff. But anyway, I think this looks good. I'm going to do another push. I'm going to continue just fine tuning, making sure that everything's right. But hopefully you can see the value of what it's just done for me there. It's gone for all these multiple layers. You know, it's you know, it's managed to do all of that. It's reviewed itself, and you know, this is very close to a merge for me. I will double check. I'm going to see if I can find any other gaps. If I do, I'll be fixing those. But look, you know, I've been talking throughout the whole thing here, but I've just managed to look what I've just done in no time. And I've created this whole, I say me, look what it's helped me do. Created all of these, you know, collections as well. So yeah, hopefully that was valuable, and I really hope that the recording actually worked this time, because I'll cry if it didn't. Yeah, good stuff. Cheers.